I sat by the window last night holding our wedding photo in my hands. My eyes were wet and I kept asking myself a question I was too afraid to say out loud. Who are you really? My name is Emily. I'm 32 years old and I live in a small town in Ohio. From the outside, people would probably say I have a good life. A kind husband. A warm home. A steady routine. Neighbors greet us with smiles and friends often call us the perfect couple. But if you looked closely, if you stepped into my heart, you would see the cracks. Cracks I've hidden for years. My husband, Daniel, is gentle in many ways. He buys me flowers sometimes. He holds my hand in the grocery store. He asks me if I'm okay when I seem quiet. And yet, every time he looks at me, I feel like there's something I don't know. Something behind his eyes that he never speaks about. It's strange, isn't it? To live with someone every day, to share the same bed, the same meals, the same roof, and still feel like you're sharing your life with a stranger. I tell myself I should be happy. Other women would give anything to have what I have. A husband who provides, who doesn't raise his voice, who tries in his own way. But inside I am restless. I feel like I'm standing on a bridge that is about to break and I don't know what waits for me if I fall. Sometimes I think about leaving. I imagine packing a small bag, walking out the front door and driving away without a word. I imagine starting over, far from this house, far from the secrets that breathe in these walls. But every time I picture it, something inside me freezes. Last night, Daniel smiled at me across the table. It was the kind of smile people would call warm. But to me it felt like a mask. Like a smile that carried more weight than joy. And in that moment I wanted to ask him everything. I wanted to ask about the phone calls he takes outside, the nights he comes home late, the things he never explains. But the words got stuck in my throat. My lips trembled and instead of asking I just smiled back. And now here I am staring at our wedding photo, whispering to myself, "Who are you?" Last night I almost asked him. But then he smiled at me and I froze. Morning always looks calm in our house. The light falls gently through the curtains. The smell of coffee fills the kitchen. From the outside you would think I live a dream. A clean house, a husband who kisses my forehead before he leaves for work, and neighbors who wave at us as we drive away together. But inside me there is no peace. Inside every morning feels heavy. Daniel and I have a routine that never changes. He makes the coffee, I cook the eggs, we sit together at the small wooden table we bought in our first year of marriage. We talk about simple things, the weather, bills, or his plans at the office. He always asks about my work too and I always answer politely. Our conversations are normal, safe, almost perfect. And yet, every word feels like paper covering a wall full of cracks. Sometimes while he speaks my eyes wander. I notice how he never lets his phone face up on the table. I notice how his smile disappears the second he thinks I'm not looking. I notice the way his shoulders sink when he thinks no one is watching. People would call me lucky. A husband who still brings me flowers once a week. A man who opens doors for me. Who plans dinners at restaurants. Who never forgets our anniversary. But what do those things mean when your heart feels empty? The truth is, Daniel's gestures no longer reach me. The flowers smell nice but they wilt within days. His hand on mine feels warm but it doesn't reach my soul. His compliments echo in my ears, but they don't live in my heart. Every day I walk through this house like a guest, pretending it's my home. I set the table, fold the laundry, smile when he kisses my cheek. But deep inside I feel like a prisoner. A prisoner in a life that looks beautiful from the outside. Last week he came home with tickets for a weekend trip. "You need a break," he said with a smile. I nodded and thanked him, but my hands felt cold when I took the envelope. I didn't want a trip. I wanted honesty. I wanted truth. Sometimes I wonder if he feels it too. If he notices the silence between us at night. If he senses how I lie awake, staring at the ceiling while he sleeps beside me. And then came the moment that shook me. One evening, while we were cleaning up after dinner, Daniel looked at me with a serious face. He wiped his hands on a towel and said quietly, "Emily, maybe it's time we think about starting a family." The plate in my hand almost slipped. My heart raced so fast I thought he could hear it. Family? Baby? I couldn't even find myself in this marriage and he wanted to bring a child into it? I smiled weakly and said nothing. He didn't notice. He kissed my forehead and walked away, leaving me frozen in the kitchen. That night as he watched television, I picked up his jacket from the chair. I wanted to hang it in the closet like I always do. But as I lifted it, something slipped from the pocket and landed on the floor. It was a folded piece of paper. I bent down, my fingers shaking as I picked it up. My heart thudded in my chest. I knew I shouldn't open it, but my hands refused to stop. And when I unfolded it, I felt the air leave my body. He made me dinner. I said thank you. Then I found something in his jacket, and my hands started shaking. The paper in my hand felt heavy, heavier than anything I had ever held. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my fingers trembling as I unfolded it. At first, the words blurred through my tears. Then they became clear. It wasn't just a receipt or a note from work. It was a letter. A letter written by a woman I had never heard of before. The words were short, but they carried weight. I'm glad we talked today. Thank you for always being there for me. My chest tightened. Who was she? What did she mean? I placed the letter on my lap and closed my eyes. That's when it happened. A memory rose up, uninvited. The past I had buried for years came rushing back, like a wave I couldn't stop. Before Daniel, there was someone else. His name was Michael. He was my first love. I was only 24 when I met him. He was charming, kind, the kind of man who made you believe in forever with just a smile. For 2 years I built my dreams around him. I imagined a wedding, children, a life full of laughter. But Michael wasn't forever. He was a storm. One night I found out the truth. A message on his phone. A woman's name I didn't recognize. Words that weren't meant for me. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was dying. He swore it was a mistake, that it was nothing, but the trust was already broken. I left him, but I carried the scars. And only months later Daniel came into my life. Daniel was different. He was safe. He was steady. He wasn't charming in the way Michael was, but he was reliable. He called when he said he would. He showed up when he promised. He listened when I spoke. At the time I thought that was enough. I thought safety was better than passion. Looking back now, I wonder if I rushed. I wonder if I married Daniel not because I was ready, but because I was afraid of being alone. I wanted to erase Michael from my heart, to bury the ghost of that betrayal. And Daniel was the man who gave me a chance to do that. But ghosts don't stay buried. Holding that letter in my hand, I felt the same pain I had felt years ago. The same dizziness, the same cold emptiness spreading through my chest. It was as if Michael's shadow had returned, this time wearing my husband's face. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe the letter was innocent. Maybe it was from a colleague or an old friend. But deep inside, my instincts screamed. I had felt this before. The silence. The secrets. The lies behind gentle smiles. The next morning I tried to act normal. I made breakfast, I asked about his day. But every word from his mouth felt like a question I couldn't answer. Who was this woman? Why did he never mention her? What else was he hiding? Later that afternoon I opened our closet and stared at the box where I kept old photographs. Against my better judgment I pulled out one from years ago. Me and Michael laughing in the park. My chest ached as I remembered that version of myself. The girl who believed in love, who believed in trust. I thought I had buried her. I thought marrying Daniel had erased her. But she was still there, hidden under years of pretending. Daniel came home that night and kissed me on the cheek just like always. But his kiss felt like a stranger's. My eyes searched his face for answers, but all I saw was a mask I couldn't read. And then my phone buzzed. A message. I picked it up, expecting it to be from my friend Sarah. But my breath caught when I saw the name. It wasn't Sarah. It wasn't anyone from work. It was Michael. After 4 years of silence. The text was short. Emily, are you okay? I've been thinking about you. My whole body froze. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. Why no? Why after all this time did he come back? The ghost I had buried had risen again. I looked at Daniel sitting on the couch with his phone in his hand. My husband hiding secrets I couldn't see. And I looked at the message from the man I had once loved, the man who had broken me. It was as if the walls of my life had cracked open. I was trapped between two men. One who had betrayed me in the past. One who might be betraying me now. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my cheeks. For the first time I admitted the truth to myself. I didn't know who I had married. I didn't know if I had ever truly healed. And I didn't know if I had the strength to face what was coming next. I buried the past. Until it texted me again after 4 years of silence. The morning after the message from Michael and the letter in Daniel's jacket, I moved like a ghost in my own house. I made coffee. I buttered toast. I smiled when Daniel walked into the kitchen. I even laughed when he told a small joke about the neighbor's cat. But under my smile I felt nothing. It was like I was acting in a quiet movie where no one could hear me breathe. "Sleep okay?" he asked, standing by the sink. "Yeah," I said. The word felt thin. His eyes searched my face. "Sure." I nodded and looked down at my plate. "I'm fine." I wasn't fine. I was a locked room. All day I kept busy. I cleaned the fridge. I changed the sheets. I answered emails. I opened a new notebook and tried to write a list called What I Know. I wrote 3 lines. I am married. I'm not happy. I'm scared. Then I closed the notebook and put it back in the drawer like it might burn my hands. At lunch my phone buzzed again. A short text from a number I now knew very well, though I had not seen it for years. "Emily, I'm sorry for the past. I hope you're okay. Please don't be mad that I texted." I stared at the message from Michael. My thumb hovered. I typed, "Please don't contact me." Then I deleted it. I typed, "I'm fine." I deleted that too. In the end, I locked the screen and left the phone face down on the counter as if that could make the past go quiet. When Daniel came home that evening, he put his phone on the table the way he always does. Screen against the wood. He kissed my cheek, soft and careful. We ate in gentle silence. I asked about his day and he asked about mine, and both of us spoke like we were walking on thin ice. After dinner, I wiped the counter again and again, even after it was clean. Daniel stood behind me. I could feel his eyes on my back. He said, voice low. "Are we okay?" Kept my hands moving. "Yes." He waited. Then he touched my shoulder. "It doesn't feel like yes." I wanted to turn and tell him everything. About the letter, about Michael's text, about the cold fear inside me. I wanted to ask him who the woman was. I wanted to say, "I am so tired of guessing." But the words jammed in my throat. I shrugged. "I'm just tired." He stood there a little longer, like a man outside a closed door. Then he said, "Okay," and walked to the living room. The TV turned on and the sound filled the space between us like a curtain. The next day I met my friend Sarah at a small cafe near the library. She looked at me from across the table, eyes warm, voice gentle. "You look pale," she said. "Like you didn't sleep." I didn't. My voice shook and I swallowed hard. "Sarah, something's wrong. I found a letter in Daniel's jacket. From a woman." It sounded close. And then my ex texted me out of nowhere. "I feel like I can't breathe." She reached for my hand. "Have you asked Daniel about the letter?" I shook my head. "I keep pretending I'm fine. I don't know why." "Maybe because you're scared of the answer," she said softly. "Maybe because pretending feels safer than breaking." I looked at our hands on the table. "I don't want to break." She squeezed my fingers. "Emily, listen to me. Pretending doesn't heal you. It never does. It only makes you smaller. And you're already small right now." I blinked fast, tears pricking my eyes. "I've known you for years," she went on. "You've carried old pain like a secret stone. First Michael. Now this. You're walking with weight that isn't meant to be permanent." A woman at the next table laughed at something on her phone. The sound was bright and far away. Sarah lowered her voice. "I'm going to say something that might hurt." "Say it." "You look like someone carrying a love that isn't hers," she whispered. "Maybe it never was. Or maybe it was, but it's not now." The words sank into me like rain into dry ground. I didn't fight them. I just let them in. We were quiet for a moment. Then I took a breath and told her everything. The jacket, the letter, the way Daniel's eyes looked tired in the morning, the late calls outside, the text from Michael. When I finished, my coffee was cold. "What do I do?" I asked. "You tell the truth," she said. "To yourself first. Then to him." I nodded. The truth. I could almost feel its shape inside my chest, heavy but clean. When I stood to leave, I bumped into someone behind me. A soft gasp. I turned. Daniel stood there holding a to-go cup. His face was surprised for a second, then still. "Oh," I said, voice small. "You're here." He looked at Sarah, then at me. "Just getting coffee." His eyes slid to our joined hands on the table, then back to my face. "I'll see you at home." He left. The bell on the door made a bright sound that felt sharper than it should. Sarah stared at me. "Do you think he heard?" "I don't know," I said. But I did know. I knew the way a person knows a storm is close even when the sky is still blue. That evening I waited for him to bring it up. He didn't. We ate. We cleaned. He sat with a book. I scrolled on my phone without seeing anything. The silence between us grew thick and tall. Around 9, Daniel stood and said, "I'm going to run an errand." He picked up his keys. "Need anything?" "No," I said. My heart beat hard. When the door closed, I grabbed my coat and followed a few minutes later, keeping distance, moving slow. I felt ridiculous, but fear has its own logic. He drove across town to a building with a small sign that said Willow Creek Counseling Center. My stomach flipped. I parked one street over and watched him from the dark car. He went inside, then came out 15 minutes later with a woman in her late 30s. She had a soft scarf and tired eyes. They stood close, talking. He handed her a small envelope. She put a hand on his arm, gentle, grateful, not romantic. He nodded and she nodded, and then she went left while he went right. The whole thing lasted less than a minute. I sank down in my seat. What did I just see? Who was she? What was he doing there? I drove home slowly, my thoughts loud, my body cold. When Daniel came in later, I was at the table with a cup of tea that had gone cold. He smiled, but his face looked pulled at the edges. "You're up." "I couldn't sleep," I said. He nodded, eyes sliding away. "Long day," he said, and went to shower. I sat there and listened to the water run. I thought of the letter in the jacket. I thought of the counseling center sign. I thought of the woman's tired eyes and the envelope. It didn't look like an affair. It looked like help. But help for what? And why the secrets? The next morning at the grocery store, a woman from our street smiled and walked over to my cart. "Emily. Hi. You and Daniel look so happy. When are you two going to have a baby?" The words hit me like a wave. My hands shook. I tried to smile back, but my mouth wouldn't obey. Something inside me gave way, quiet and sudden. Tears filled my eyes and then spilled out before I could stop them. "Oh, honey," she said, startled. "Did I say something wrong?" "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry, excuse me." I left my cart and walked fast to the bathroom. I locked a stall and leaned my head against the cool metal. The tears came hard from a deep place, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. I stayed there until my breathing was slow again. I wiped my face with a paper towel. My eyes were red. I looked like a woman who hadn't told herself the truth in a long time. Back home, I took the notebook from the drawer. I turned to a fresh page and wrote, "I am not okay. Then I am afraid of his secret. Then I have my own." I wrote until the words steadied me, small and plain. That afternoon Sarah called. "Come over," she said. I made soup. I sat at her kitchen table while steam rose from our bowls. "I followed him," I told her, my voice small. "He went to a counseling center. He met a woman. It didn't look like an affair. It looked like support." Sarah rested her chin on her hand. "Maybe that letter was from someone he's helping. Maybe he didn't tell you because he was ashamed of the past. Or scared you'd see him as weak. Or he promised someone to keep it private." "I don't know," I whispered. "I only know the silence is killing me." She nodded. "Then end the silence." I went home in the early evening with a plan that felt both simple and impossible. I would tell him how I felt. Not the whole story at once, maybe, but I would stop pretending. I would tell the truth about my heart. I put on water for tea and waited. The house was too quiet. The clock ticked loud on the wall. I watched light fade from the window glass and listened for his car. When Daniel finally came in, he looked tired in a way that felt deeper than work. He put his keys in the bowl, took off his coat, and stood there like he was searching for words. "I heard you at the cafe," he said softly, without any anger. "Not everything. Just enough to know you're hurting." My mouth opened, then closed. He walked to the table and sat across from me. I don't want you to hurt, he said. I don't want to either, I whispered. But I do. He rubbed his forehead. I'm not good at big talks, he said, a small sad smile. I write things down when I can't say them. He glanced at the drawer by my chair, the one with my notebook. For a second I wondered if we were two people writing secret letters in the same house. I swallowed. Daniel, there's something I need to ask. My hands shook and I put them in my lap so he wouldn't see. I found a letter. In your jacket. From a woman. He didn't look shocked. He just looked very, very tired. I know, he said. I was careless. The kettle clicked off behind me. Neither of us moved. I'm not angry, I said, voice breaking. I'm lost. I don't know what's true in this house. I don't even know what's true in me. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes on the floor. Emily, he said softly, I think we should talk. Really talk. My chest tightened. Air felt thin. I nodded. But my courage, fresh a moment ago, slid away like water. Not tonight, I whispered. If I start, I don't know where I'll stop. He sat back, hands open. Tell me when. We were quiet for a long time. The clock ticked. A car passed outside. Somewhere a dog barked and then it was quiet again. Finally, Daniel stood. He took his phone from his pocket and very slowly turned it face up on the table. The screen lit the wood with a soft square of light. I have nothing to hide from you, he said. But I understand if you don't believe that right now. He went to bed. I stayed in the chair, eyes on the small bright screen that faded to black after a few seconds. I thought of all the nights I'd stayed still, holding myself closed. I thought of the counseling center, the envelope, the woman with tired eyes. I thought of Michael's message like a hand from the past trying to pull me backward. I thought of Sarah's words. Pretending doesn't heal you. I pulled the notebook from the drawer and wrote one more line. Tomorrow I will speak. I slept little. When I did sleep, I dreamed of doors. Many doors, all closed, all waiting for my hand. In the morning I made coffee. My hands were steady. The light through the curtains was pale. Daniel sat at the table, quiet, watching me like a man afraid to breathe too loud. I put a mug in front of him and sat down. My heart beat hard, but it did not run. I inhaled slow and deep. Then I lifted my eyes to his. I set the mug down, met his gaze, and said the words that would change our life. Daniel, we need to talk. The word talk hung between us like smoke. Daniel looked at me across the table, his hands wrapped around the coffee mug, his eyes steady but soft. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The clock ticked loud, filling the silence. Finally he nodded. Let's talk. I swallowed, my throat dry. I found a letter in your jacket, I said, my voice shaking. From a woman. Scared me, Daniel. It felt secret. He closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. I knew you'd see it someday. My chest tightened. Who is she? He was quiet for a moment, then said, her name is Claire. She's not what you think. I leaned forward, my heart racing. Then tell me what she is. He rubbed his forehead with his hand. She's my sister. I blinked. My mind stalled. Your what? My half-sister, he said, voice low. We share the same father. I didn't grow up with her. I only found out about her 2 years ago. She was in trouble, Emily. Real trouble. I've been helping her quietly. Money sometimes. Support. She asked me not to tell anyone. I promised. I stared at him. The air felt thin. 2 years, I whispered. 2 years you've been hiding this from me. I didn't want to, he said quickly. But she begged me. She was ashamed of her life, her choices. She said if I told anyone, even you, she would disappear. I didn't want to lose her again. The words hit me like stones. Relief mixed with pain. So it wasn't an affair. It wasn't another woman in that way. But it was still a secret. A whole life kept in the shadows while I lay awake wondering. Why didn't you trust me? My voice cracked. I'm your wife. You could have told me. I would have understood. His eyes were heavy. Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd see me differently. Afraid it would pull us apart. I laughed bitterly, tears sliding down my face. It did anyway. He reached across the table but I pulled my hands back. My body shook. Do you know what it's like to live with suspicion every day? To smile while feeling like something is always wrong? You locked me out, Daniel. You built a wall and left me outside. I know, he whispered. And I hate myself for it. The room fell into silence again. I could hear my own heartbeat. I thought about Michael, about the betrayal that had carved scars in me years ago. I thought about how I ran to Daniel because he felt safe, solid, honest. And now here I was facing another man who had hidden a truth from me. Different but the same wound. I don't know how to forgive this, I said softly. Daniel's voice broke when he answered. I already knew that. The pain in his eyes cut me open. He wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He just looked sad, like a man who had already lost what mattered most. We sat in silence for a long time. He didn't beg. I didn't accuse. It was almost worse that way. No shouting, no broken dishes, just two people sitting at a table staring at the pieces of something they once believed would last. Finally I stood. My chair scraped softly against the floor. My legs felt weak but I made myself walk to the bedroom. I pulled out a small bag from the closet and began to pack. Daniel appeared at the doorway. He didn't try to stop me. He just leaned against the frame, his face pale, his eyes wet. Where will you go? I don't know, I whispered. But I can't stay. Not right now. He nodded, slow and heavy as if every movement cost him. I'll give you space. I zipped the bag. My hands trembled but my decision felt clear. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't live in silence. I couldn't stay in a house where secrets lived stronger than love. When I walked toward the door he followed but he didn't reach for me. He just stood still watching. I turned once, my eyes blurry with tears. His lips parted like he wanted to say something, but he waited until I opened the door. As I stepped out his voice came soft, almost broken. Thank you, he whispered. For not lying one last time. The door closed between us. I stood in the cool air outside, bag in my hand, my chest tight and aching. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fall on the ground. I wanted to rewind time. But all I could do was walk forward, one step at a time, away from the house that had been both my shelter and my prison. I left. And as I closed the door he said, "Thank you for not lying one last time." The first night alone was the hardest. I lay on a borrowed couch in a small rented apartment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The silence was sharp, almost too loud. I thought I would feel free but all I felt was empty. Days turned into weeks. I built a routine, small and fragile. I walked to the park in the mornings. I cooked simple meals for myself. I wrote in a journal every night, sometimes only one line, sometimes pages. The words became my anchor. They didn't fix the pain but they gave it a place to live outside my chest. Some mornings I woke up with tears already on my face. Other days I surprised myself with a moment of calm. Healing, I learned, wasn't steady. Came in waves, some soft, some cruel. Friends called to check on me. Sarah visited often, bringing soup, blankets and her steady presence. She never pushed me to decide what came next. She only said, "Take your time. There's no clock on healing." One evening I returned to the apartment and found an envelope slipped under the door. My heart jumped when I saw Daniel's handwriting. My fingers shook as I picked it up. For a long moment I just held it, afraid of what might be inside. Then I opened it slowly. The letter was short. "Emily, I'm not writing to ask you back. I just want you to know the truth I should have told you from the beginning. Claire's my half-sister. I helped her quietly because I promised her I would. I thought I was protecting her. But in doing so I broke us. I am sorry. Not for helping her but for shutting you out. You deserved my trust. You deserved my honesty. If nothing else, I hope you find peace. You always deserved that too. Daniel." Tears blurred the words. I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't fix what was broken. But it was honest. For the first time I felt like he had spoken to me without walls. I sat at my desk and opened my journal. I wrote, "He did love me. Maybe not perfectly. But he did." Then another line, "And I loved him too. But sometimes love isn't enough if silence takes its place." The days slowly softened. The weight in my chest grew lighter, though it never disappeared completely. I started taking longer walks. I noticed the sound of birds again. I let myself smile at small things. A child laughing in the park, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery. One afternoon I sat by the lake, watching the water ripple under the wind. I thought about my life, about Michael, about Daniel, about all the ways I had tried to bury my pain instead of facing it. Pretending had kept me standing, but it had never healed me. Only truth, as painful as it was, had finally opened the door. I didn't know what my future would hold. I didn't know if I would go back to Daniel someday, or if our paths had ended for good. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living half-truths. I couldn't keep being a stranger in my own life. As the sun set, I whispered into the quiet air, "I will be okay." And for the first time I almost believed it. That night, before I closed my eyes, I wrote one last line in my journal. If you've ever felt like me, lost in someone else's silence, know this: you are not alone. Tell me your story in the comments.